So I'm going to jump right in. My name is Ariana Gibson, and I am the head of brand and driver insights at Clearcover. I want to say a quick thank you to Josh and the Propeller team for having us. I've practiced this a number of times, and it's always about 14 minutes, so I'm going to speak really fast to try and get it all in. Let's go. Okay, so to set the context a little about Clearcover and about me, Clearcover is an insurtech startup. We focus on car insurance. We sell car insurance in 4 states, and we will be in 2 more by the end of the year. 2019 has been really great for us. We raised $43 million in our Series B. We went from 45 people to 114. Things are going very well. A little background about me, I was a film student, then worked in advertising, then did business development, that whole 20s figuring out what you want to do, but what I realized is I really like telling stories, and so I shifted into working in brand sort of accidentally. I was a creative director working on video, writing, and directing, but I was working with Fortune 50, Fortune 100 companies, and even startups. And so often when we talked about a piece of creative content they wanted to build, it turned into a conversation about brand. So I thought, well, I better do some homework and learn more about brand, and so I am entirely self-taught. I encourage you to do the same thing. I do not have an MBA in brand, and I was told I was hired for that reason. The other thing I wanted to point out is that this is called How I, or Here's How I, but it should be Here's How We. For so many of us, I'm sure it's a Here's How We scenario, but in brand especially so. It requires a lot of people and a lot of participation and buy-in from your entire organization to build a brand, so I got to steward it and lead it, but it was not just me alone. And they said to put a bragging point, so that's what the second to last one is. We built a brand that people say they love. They use the word love, and we are a car insurance company, which is a pretty big deal. It was my goal from the beginning, because when you think about building a brand, so much of it is about establishing emotional connections with people, and when you think about the emotional connections that typically are associated with car insurance, it's like ire, disgust, fear, some bad things, so we set out to change it. So setting up the problem. In 2017, when I joined Clearcover, Clearcover was pretty incredible. I had worked for startups before, I had consulted startups before, and I was consulting this one, and I could tell that they had a lot of the ingredients that you need to be successful. They had a great founding team, experience, decades of experience in insurance, tons of experience in technology, but the area where they were lacking a little was in a sort of structured and formalized brand strategy. So I was consulting, and after 2 meetings, our CEO says, "Come work for us, build a brand." And I said, "I've never done that before." And he said, "Perfect, none of us have." So it was the right attitude for it, but I understood I knew how to tell a story, so I got to work. One of the other problems we were facing is that we are in a heavily commoditized industry, and the role of brand in commoditized industries is perhaps more important than in any other type of industry, because if everyone's charging about the same price, offering about the same product, you have to find a way to differentiate yourself, and brand can be the thing that drives loyalty. So it was incredibly important, but our competitors were being very loud. In insurance, brand recognition is huge. We just did a consumer survey that said, on average, people can list 5 different insurance companies off the top of their head. I'm sure everyone in this room could do it. But the loyalty component is really low. So recognition of brands in car insurance is high, loyalty is really low. The reason that recognition is high is that on average, then in 2017 and now, large insurance companies spend an average of $6 billion on advertising. So if you've ever been to a sporting event, you've probably seen this before. It's why you know the names, because learning happens through repetition, and they know this. So we went to market saying we weren't going to advertise at all. And I took the job, and all of my friends and former colleagues said, "What are you doing? This is a terrible idea. How will you possibly help people understand who you are?" But that is what today's Here's How is about. So here's how we built a brand in a crowded market. The first thing you have to do is talk to customers. And for some people, you won't have customers. When I joined the company, we hadn't launched, we didn't have any, but we had customers in the industry, in the market. And so we went to them and we said, what do you like about insurance? What do you not like about insurance? What is it that you're hoping to get? And that is something that we've continued. So our company says that we want to build a car insurance company that is something customers actually want. That was the differentiator for us. You don't get to remain that company if you don't continually go out and ask people what they want, and if what you're doing is right. So the way that we talk to customers definitely changed. We do surveys. We had those surveys set up before we ever launched the company. We knew we were going to ask people, was your experience positive, yes or no? If yes, why? If no, why? And we used that information to form the foundation of the brand. So brand is a lot of things. A lot of people say many different things about brand, but I think the best way to think about it is that brand is 2 things. It is the promise that you make to your customers, and then the clothes that that promise is dressed in. That is not mine. I read it in a book. one of those self-teaching moments. It was how to build a brand for startups. I bought it on Amazon. But I liked the way that they said that because people think about the close more often than they think about the part that matters more, which is the promise. The close just need to be a reflection of what that promise is going to be. And if you want to satisfy your customers and you don't ask them what it takes to do that, you're just shooting in the dark. So we talk to customers in a lot of different ways, and then we talk to colleagues. The best brand ambassadors for any company that exists in the world will be its employees. If you just go to your team members and tell them this is what the brand is, please memorize this tagline, slogan, brand promise, value props, it's not the same as having meetings and talking to people and saying, what do you think we want to be? What made you join this company? What do you think Clearcover does for people? Because the idea is figuring out what are the benefits you can bring to people's lives, those value props. One thing I didn't mention about talking to customers that's very important if you haven't heard this before, is that when you are creating your messaging, you want to be formulaic about it and create a strategic messaging document. There are a lot of resources online you can find to figure out what that means, what are the components of a strategic messaging guide. But value props must be in the language of the customer. So we made a mistake in the beginning and we sort of went with what we thought worked because we were talking to a lot of investors. We were talking to a lot of press and media outlets to be able to tell our story, and what they wanted and what they found interesting was very different than what customers wanted and customers found interesting. So about 6 months after we launched, we did a refresh of the website. The design wasn't that different, but the words were. So get buy-in from your colleagues and avoid confirmation bias. Go out and seek the people you think won't agree with what you're saying, because avoiding them just means you're not solving holistically and coming up with a strategy that works for everyone. So make sure that you get buy-in from people, because then they'll be excellent ambassadors for your brand. Number 3 could be an entire day-long workshop or hour-long presentation. It is part of the hardest part, but we built messaging and visuals that reflected what we heard. So the messaging part I kind of talked about already. The visuals just, it takes work. It takes talented artists, it takes people who are good at communicating, who you can say, this is what we stand for, this is our promise, and then they bring designs or photography, illustrations, videos to life that capture the essence of what you're trying to convey to the market. Number 4, we created a robust brand guide. So in brand guides, typically people focus on the close and they're telling you this is our logo and here are the versions of it and here's the font treatment, and all of that is incredibly important. But our brand guide starts with who we are. So we talk about our culture, our philosophy on culture, we share our core values, we give specific language to talk about our company so that people who are going to talk about our company are armed with the best possible resource. They also say about brand, if you don't tell people who you are, they will decide for you, and that's very real. They will base it on one service interaction, on one ad they saw on Facebook. So you have to make sure that you know what you're doing, that you're strategic about the messaging, about the visuals, that you are consistent across platforms, and one of the best ways to do that is to work with partners and give them the tools to be able to talk about you exactly like you want to be talked about. Number 5, I'm going to pause. So now everyone's really paying attention. Make inclusivity a must. I think it is one of the biggest things that has made us successful as a brand from the very beginning. As a creative director, I would always say to the people who I worked with, when someone finishes engaging with this, what do we want them to think, feel, or do? I told our brand team that we want people who engage with our content to feel like that is a company for me. That is somewhere where I belong. This part I can't emphasize enough. Be inclusive in your illustrations, in the photos that you pick, in the way you word things. We put our job descriptions through a gender identifier to find language that might make people feel isolated. And I've been at conferences where people say, I can't believe how much diversity you have in your illustrations. And it's something we're really proud of. I think it's a thing that creates that emotional connection, which is what you need to do in brand. And then lastly, we followed through, which sounds sort of simple, but people forget to do it. The work of brand really is about figuring out what that promise is and figuring out the close. But the delivery of the promise happens in a different part of the organization. So you have to, if you're working on brand, work with the people who are responsible for delivering on the promise. So for us, our 3 value props are price, ease, and service. Price happens through the distribution model we have, so that's our growth team. It also happens with the technology we use to be an efficiently operating company, so we work with the tech team. The biggest one, of course, service, is our customer advocates. So we hired our director of claims a year and a half before the first claim ever came through our doors, because we knew we needed to do well on that. The loyalty piece in insurance that's lacking is because people sort of don't pay enough attention to delivering on the promise. So brand sets up the promise, finds ways to create visuals, and messaging and stories to tell, but you rely on people like, I have a great partner in PR and communications who we say, my team's the water and she's the pipes. I don't know how to get it to the right people at the right time, but she does. So I just work on telling the stories that we think will resonate with people because we did the research to understand who those people are. The results. I don't know how long I've been going on, but I'll rush it. The results, I wanted to go with something qualitative because that's way more my comfort zone than quantitative. I think we're going to get tons of quantitative stuff today, so this will be the feelings portion of the morning. I feel like this is we asked people for the first year. We didn't do NPS intentionally, and I fought hard to not do NPS because I said, there are psychology studies that say people are bad predictors of future behavior, but beyond that, it doesn't tell us exactly what we're doing right or what we're doing wrong. So we just said, I had a positive experience with Clearcover. Rate the degree to which you agree with that statement. And if it was a high level of agree, we said, great, what did we do well? And if people said, no, this was terrible, we said, we're so sorry, we want to make it right. What was it that we did? So one person who said they had a positive experience, we asked why, said, I feel like Clearcover truly has my back. My first experience was smooth and well handled. It feels more personal than other insurance services. I love that I feel like part of the family. This is I want to frame this at work because it's the best thing that could have happened in taking on the challenge of building a brand and trying to connect emotionally with people about a topic that's hard to connect on. But what it's doing is telling us that something about the way we are coming to the market and telling our story is making them feel like we're different than other insurance companies. And that is the ultimate goal when you're in a commoditized industry. So I feel this captures very well how our process went to build a brand. Building a brand is about building it and then never stopping building it. So you have to check in all the time. Just like you never stop talking to customers to learn what they want, you also have to build in the tools that help you measure your reputation in the market and what people think of you. So I wanted to list a couple of the tools because I know people will get this slide later that we've used. It is by no means a comprehensive list, but knowing that a lot of people are sort of in an early stage of their companies, I wanted to focus on some things that might be helpful for you and how we've used them. Our Google review rating is a 4.7 out of 5. We're really proud of this. We have hundreds of reviews if you Google us. And that change happened because we used Trustpilot and it wasn't the right fit for us. So I am not here to dig on any company. It's just depending on the company that you are and the stage of company that you are, you may try something that's not right for you now that would be right for you later, or it just might be a bad fit. We're saving thousands of dollars by not using Trustpilot. We've automated in our system the trigger that sends out the request to leave a review on Google. There was fear that people who don't have Gmail wouldn't have a Google account, they might not leave a review. We saw exponentially more reviews left when we switched it to this process, and it's been helpful to understand what people like about us. We use SurveyMonkey for a variety of surveys, but customer satisfaction is an area where we really focus. Right now our score is a 92%, so this is after a service interaction. This tells us we promised you good service and yes, you think we are delivering it, so we're doing something right. We measure employee net promoter score. A brand is not just an external thing. There is a whole movement right now about employer brands. It should be an extension of the brand you have created for consumers. You should build them in tandem, but it's important. Oh, I'm so over, huh? No, he's just my friend and giving me backup. Okay, but I will get through it. So our ENPS is 77, something we're really proud of. We have Google alerts on a sort of more simple level to see what people are saying about us. We originally used Hootsuite to monitor.
Just hold it consistent in front of your mouth.
There we go, okay. We used Hootsuite to monitor social mentions across the internet. It wasn't the right fit for us, so we switched to Sprout Social, a paid version of Sprout Social, and we are enjoying it. Review Trackers is a local startup, and they have a widget that we use on our reviews page. It's much more cost effective than some of the other tools that we've used, and we simply use it as an aggregator to help us make sure that we're responding in time to the messages that we're getting and reviews that we're getting across the App Store and Facebook and any variety of places. Crimson Hexagon is a great tool. Don't make the mistake I did. We got it too soon. I wasted a lot of money. That will also happen. You try and be so thoughtful, but it was just not the right tool for us at that time. But overall, the feedback that we're getting on third-party reviews that we get internally from our employees and the customer satisfaction score, this thing we really care about, is telling us that this thing we're promising is working, but we won't stop doing the work because the work of brand never stops. Thank you.
If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. And same with all speakers. We try to do it about 15 minutes for everybody. But if there are any questions, feel free.
When you conducted your customer feedbacks or the initial surveys, did you outsource that or did you build that in-house?
We've done it all in-house because we were trying to be thrifty. So before we launched, we just used Craigslist to ask people to come in and do in-person interviews, user testing, all of the kind of UX research. It might be low battery, it's flashing, I don't know. But I'm gonna keep trying. So we started by having personal conversations with them, phone calls, in person if we could, and then we set everything up on SurveyMonkey on a free version of the tool originally, just to make sure that after an interaction, and we had after a sale, after a service situation, and after a claim, we were asking people how they did. I think there are tremendous resources in Chicago for paying for that. It's just a matter of, do you have the budget for it? For us, one of the main things you learn researching consumers about car insurance is that the two things people want are low prices and you to be there when they have an accident. So we talked about, is it worth investing $150,000 to do a giant market research survey to learn some things that we maybe already know? So it's, we're unique because we're not, we're a unique case. We can talk more about it after in terms of how we applied it later for marketing stuff. But I think you can find some really great tools that are free, and that's what we did in the beginning. Thanks.
Thank you very much.